My wife went to her doctor's appointments every Wednesday at 11 a.m. sharp. For 35 years of marriage, through every season, every holiday, every family crisis, she never missed one. When I asked what kind of specialist required weekly visits for 3.5 decades, Sandra would touch my cheek and give me that soft smile I'd fallen in love with back in college. Just keeping myself healthy for you, William. Just making sure I'm here for the long haul. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Sandra was a nurse. She understood health, prevention, the importance of regular checkups. She was always the one reminding me to take my blood pressure medication, scheduling my annual physicals, making sure I ate enough vegetables. If anyone took health seriously, it was her. The day she died, I was in the garage fixing a leaky faucet I'd been putting off for weeks. Our daughter Rebecca called, and I knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. Dad, her voice cracked. On that single word, you need to get to Memorial Hospital right now. Mom was in an accident. I dropped everything. The wrench clattered against concrete, water still dripping from the pipe I'd been working on. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I remember parking crooked across 2 spaces. I remember running through automatic doors that seemed to open too slowly. I remember a doctor with kind eyes and tired hands telling me that Sandra had been hit by a drunk driver on Route 9, that she died on impact, that there was nothing anyone could have done. The funeral was massive. Sandra had touched so many lives during her 40 years as a pediatric nurse. Parents brought children she'd cared for. Colleagues told stories about her dedication, her warmth, her skill. I stood there in my black suit, shaking hands, accepting condolences, feeling like I was watching everything happen to someone else. My son Marcus held my arm like he was afraid I might collapse. Maybe he was right to worry. 2 weeks after we buried her, I was going through Sandra's home office trying to organize paperwork for the estate when I found something odd. A bank statement from Regional Credit Union. I'd never heard of Regional Credit Union. We banked at First Commerce, had for 30 years. Joint checking, joint savings, everything transparent, everything together, or so I thought. The statement showed an account in Sandra's name only. The balance was $847, but what caught my eye was the transaction history. Weekly withdrawals. Every Wednesday, for years. Hundreds of withdrawals, each one between $200 and $500. I sat there at her desk, the paper trembling in my hands, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Doctor's appointments. Every Wednesday, for 35 years. I called the credit union the next morning. The representative, a young man with a cheerful voice that felt obscene given the circumstances, confirmed that yes, Sandra Thompson had maintained an account with them since 1989. Yes, there had been regular withdrawals. No, there were no other account holders listed. Would I like to close the account now that I had the death certificate? I said yes. I said I'd come in that afternoon. I didn't tell Rebecca or Marcus, not yet. Not until I understood what I was looking at. Before I continued, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. The credit union was in a strip mall, 40 minutes from our house, next to a nail salon and a tax preparation service. I'd driven past this plaza 1,000 times and never noticed it. The manager, a woman named Patricia Chen, met with me in a small office that smelled like coffee and printer toner. Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your wife was a valued client for many years. I slid the statement across her desk. Can you tell me about this account? She glanced at it, then at her computer screen. What would you like to know? Where did the money come from? Patricia typed something, frowned slightly at whatever she was reading. The deposits came from various sources over the years. Personal checks, cash deposits, some direct transfers from your joint account at First Commerce. My stomach dropped. Our joint account? Yes, sir. It looks like there were monthly transfers of $500 starting in 2003. Those stopped about 6 months ago. I did the math. 20 years of $500 monthly transfers. That was $120,000 minimum, plus whatever else she'd deposited. Where did the withdrawals go? Patricia's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. Mr. Thompson, I can give you account activity, but I can't tell you what your wife did with the cash once she withdrew it. That's not information we track. Can I get copies of everything? Transaction history, all of it? Of course. It'll take me about 20 minutes to compile and print. I waited in the lobby, watching people come and go, a young couple opening their first joint account, laughing about something, An elderly man arguing about a fee, a woman with 2 small children, trying to keep them quiet while she spoke to a teller, normal people doing normal banking things, not sitting there wondering if their entire marriage had been a lie. Patricia returned with a folder thick with papers. This is everything from the account opening in 1989 to last week. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call. I drove home with that folder on my passenger seat like it was a bomb. At every red light, I considered opening it. At every red light, I couldn't make myself do it. Marcus was waiting at my house when I got there. He'd let himself in with his key. He took one look at my face and stood up from the kitchen table. "Dad, what's wrong?" I set the folder down. "Your mother had a secret bank account. For 35 years, she withdrew money every Wednesday. Tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more. I don't know where it went." Marcus stared at the folder like it might bite him. "That's not possible. Mom was the most honest person I've ever known. She never even kept secrets about surprise birthday parties." I opened the folder and spread the statements across the table. The evidence was undeniable. Page after page of withdrawals. Every Wednesday, like clockwork, like a routine she'd perfected over decades. Marcus sat down heavily. "The doctor's appointments. Oh God, Dad, the doctor's appointments." We spent that evening going through every statement, trying to find a pattern. The withdrawals started small in 1989, just $100 here and there. By the mid-90s, they'd increased to $200, $300 weekly. In the 2000s, they sometimes hit $500. We calculated the total. Over the life of the account, Sandra had withdrawn approximately $487,000, nearly $500,000. Gone. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so much like his mother it hurt to watch. Where does that kind of money even go? Gambling? Rebecca would know. She lives closer. She saw Mom more often. Maybe Mom said something, mentioned something. I shook my head. Your mother was careful. If she kept this from me for 35 years, she kept it from everyone. But we have to ask. We have to know. Rebecca came over that night. She was 7 months pregnant with her second child, moving slowly, one hand supporting her lower back. When we showed her the statements, she lowered herself into a chair and just stared. No. Mom wouldn't. There has to be an explanation. We don't know what it is yet, Marcus said gently. But Dad found the account. The withdrawals are real. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Maybe she was helping someone. You know how Mom was always taking care of people. Maybe she was supporting a family member we don't know about. Or helping patients who couldn't afford treatment, or donating to charity. Those were good theories. I wanted them to be true. But something about the secrecy, the weekly routine, the decades of careful deception felt wrong for charitable giving. People who donate to charity usually want their spouse to know. They're proud of it. They don't hide it. The next morning, I called our financial advisor, George Hartman. George had been managing our retirement accounts for 20 years. If anyone knew about money irregularities, it would be him. "William," George said after I explained the situation, "I'm going to be straight with you. About 6 months ago, Sandra called me. She wanted to know about early withdrawal penalties on your IRA accounts. Did she withdraw anything?" "No, I advised her that early. Withdrawal would cost you both significantly, in taxes and penalties. She said she'd think about it and get back to me. She never did. 6 months ago, the same time the monthly transfers to her secret account had stopped. The same time I realized with dawning horror that Sandra had started seeming stressed. I'd noticed it but hadn't pressed. She'd said it was work, staffing issues at the hospital, the usual complaints. I'd believed her because I always believed her. "George, I need you to check our accounts. All of them. Make sure nothing else is missing. I'll run a complete audit and call you back this afternoon." When George called back, the news was mixed. "Your main accounts are intact. Retirement, savings, everything we've been managing is exactly where it should be. But William, there's something else." "What? Your house? Did you know Sandra took out a home equity line of credit 3 years ago?" I felt the room tilt. "What? $75,000. It's been fully drawn down. The minimum payments are being made from your joint checking account. But you're only paying interest." "The principal hasn't been touched." I pulled up our joint checking account online. There it was, buried in the automatic payments. I never looked at closely because Sandra handled the bills. $340 a month to Regional Credit Union. I'd seen it. I'd probably seen it 100 times. But it was just another bill in a long list of bills. And I'd trusted Sandra to manage them. She'd been managing them. She'd just also been managing a massive secret. Marcus and Rebecca came back over that night. When I told them about the home equity line, Rebecca put her head in her hands. This isn't real. This can't be real. Mom was the responsible one. Mom was the one who taught us about saving money and living within our means. Mom lectured me about my student loans for 2 years. Marcus was quieter, more withdrawn. Dad, he finally said, we need to consider the possibilities here. Either Mom was in serious trouble and didn't tell anyone, or she was doing something she knew we wouldn't approve of. Like what? Rebecca snapped. What could possibly require $500,000 over 35 years that she couldn't tell her own husband about? That's what we need to find out, I said, and I think I know where to start. The hospital. Someone there might know something. The next day, I drove to Memorial Hospital where Sandra had worked for 40 years. I'd been there countless times over the decades. Christmas parties, retirement celebrations. That time Marcus broke his arm and Sandra wanted him treated by her colleagues. The pediatric unit was on the 3rd floor. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding harder than it should have been. The nurse manager, a woman named Diane Porter, had worked with Sandra for 15 years. She met me in a small consultation room, her face etched with sympathy. William, I'm so sorry. We've all been devastated. Sandra was the heart of this unit. I know, thank you. Diane, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, anything. Did Sandra have any financial problems that you knew about? Gambling, debt, anything like that? Diane blinked, clearly taken aback. Sandra? No, never. She was the most financially stable person I knew. She brought her lunch from home every day. She drove the same car for 12 years. She never even participated in the office. Lottery pools, because she said it, was a waste of money. That sounded like Sandra. Exactly like her, which made the secret account even more incomprehensible. Did she ever mention going to doctor's appointments on Wednesdays? Every Wednesday for years? Diane frowned, thinking, I never really thought about it, but yes. Wednesday was always her short day. She'd work morning shift and leave by 10:30. She said she had a standing appointment. We all just assumed it was medical. She never talked about it? Never. Sandra was private about personal things. She'd listen to everyone else's problems for hours, but she rarely shared her own. Did she seem stressed lately? In the last 6 months or so? Diane's expression shifted. Actually, yes. She'd been more withdrawn, more tired. I asked her about it a few times, but she just said she was dealing with some family stuff. I assumed it was health-related. Maybe something with you or the kids that she didn't want to discuss at work. I left the hospital with more questions than answers. Sandra had been meticulous about maintaining the fiction of medical appointments. She'd structured her entire work schedule around Wednesdays for decades. That level of planning, that sustained deception, it spoke to something deeply important to her, something worth protecting at any cost. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed, the bed we'd shared for 35 years, staring at Sandra's side. Her pillow still smelled like her shampoo. Her reading glasses were still on the nightstand next to a novel she'd never finish. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, but nothing was the same. At 2 a.m., I got up and went back to her office. I'd been through her desk, her file cabinets, her computer. But I hadn't checked everywhere. I started pulling books off her bookshelf, shaking them to see if anything fell out. Nothing. I checked behind picture frames, under drawers, inside decorative boxes. Nothing. Then, I noticed the small, wooden chest on the top shelf, partially hidden behind a stack of old medical journals. It was ornate, inlaid with mother of pearl, the kind of box you keep precious things in. I'd seen it before but never opened it. It had always been Sandra's private space, and I'd respected that. I didn't respect it now. Inside were letters, dozens of them, bundled with rubber bands, organized by year. The earliest ones were dated 1989. The same year the bank account was opened. My hands shook as I pulled out the first bundle. The letters were addressed to Sandra. The return address was a place called Greenwood Care Facility in a town I'd never heard of, about an hour north. The first letter I opened was dated March 15, 1989. Dear Sandra, thank you for your visit yesterday and for the payment. Your mother had a good week. She's been participating in art therapy and seems to enjoy it. As we discussed, her Alzheimer's is progressing, but she remains comfortable and well cared for. We'll see you next Wednesday. Best regards, Margaret Chen, Director. I read it 3 times. Your mother, Sandra's mother, but Sandra's mother had died in 1987. We'd gone to the funeral. I'd held Sandra while she cried. I'd helped clean out the small apartment where her mother had lived alone after Sandra's father passed away in 1985, except apparently she hadn't died. I opened another letter, then another. The story pieced itself together in fragments. Sandra's mother, Helen, had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 1987, at age 62. By the time of what we'd thought was her funeral, she'd already been placed in Greenwood Care Facility. Sandra had lied about all of it. The death, the funeral, the cremation, all of it fabricated. And for 35 years, every Wednesday, Sandra had been visiting her mother in a care facility I didn't know existed, paying for her care out of money she'd been secretly siphoning from our marriage. Sat there on the floor of Sandra's office, surrounded by letters trying to understand. Why lie? Why not tell me? We could have handled it together. We could have afforded it together. A later letter provided some answers. It was dated June 2003 from a different director. Dear Sandra, I wanted to follow up on our conversation regarding your mother's care costs. As you know, memory care facilities like ours are expensive, and Helen's condition requires significant specialized support. I understand your concern about your family's finances, and I want to assure you that we're committed to continuing Helen's care. The payment plan we discussed, while stretched, is manageable for you, and we appreciate your dedication to your mother's well-being. I know you mentioned that your family doesn't know about Helen's condition or her placement here. While I respect your privacy, I do want to gently encourage you to consider sharing this burden with your husband. Caregiving, even from a distance, takes a toll. You don't have to carry this alone. 2003. That was the year Marcus had started college. The year Rebecca had gotten married. The year we'd finally paid off our house, or so I thought before Sandra took out the home equity line. The year Sandra had suddenly picked up extra shifts at the hospital, saying she wanted to pad our retirement account. She'd been padding something all right, but not our future, her mother's present. I kept reading. The letters painted a picture of a devoted daughter making impossible choices. Helen's care costs had started at around $4,000 a month in 1989. By the 2010s, they'd climbed to over $7,000 monthly. Sandra had been paying it all, every cent, through a combination of secret savings, careful skimming from our joint account, extra shifts, and eventually, the home equity line when her other sources ran dry. The most recent letter was dated 4 months before Sandra died. Dear Sandra, I'm writing with a heavy heart to inform you that we need to discuss Helen's care arrangement. Your mother is now 98 years old. She's been with us for 36 years, longer than any other resident in Greenwood's history. She no longer recognizes anyone, including you. Her quality of life is minimal, and her care costs continue to increase as her medical needs grow more complex. You've been an exemplary daughter. Your dedication has been extraordinary, but I'm concerned about you, about the financial strain you've mentioned, about your health, about the toll this has taken. I want you to know that if you need to make difficult decisions about Helen's care, including considering transition to a state facility, we support you. Please call me. Let's talk about options. Margaret Chen, Director. Sandra had never made that call. Or maybe she had. And it had been the stress that I'd noticed in those final months. The weight of 35 years of secret caregiving, of financial juggling, of lying to the person she'd promised to be honest with. I called Marcus at 6 a.m. I knew it was too early, but I couldn't wait. Dad. His voice was thick with sleep. What's wrong? Your grandmother didn't die in 1987. She's been alive this whole time. Mom's been visiting her every Wednesday for 35 years. There was a long silence. What? I found letters. Helen, your grandmother, she's in a memory care facility. She has been since before you were born. Mom paid for all of it secretly. That's where the money went. Marcus and Rebecca met me at Greenwood Care Facility that afternoon. It was a beautiful place, I had to admit. Well-maintained grounds, a modern building, nothing institutional about it. This was high-end care, the kind that cost a fortune. Margaret Chen, the director, met us in her office. She was in her 70s now, gray-haired and gentle-eyed. When I told her who we were, her face crumpled. Oh, Sandra, I was hoping she'd told you before. I'm so sorry this is how you're finding out. Tell us about our grandmother, Rebecca said. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. Helen Thompson is 98 years old. She's been a resident here since 1989. She has late-stage Alzheimer's. She hasn't spoken in over 10 years. She doesn't recognize anyone or respond to external stimuli. Her body is healthy, but her mind is gone. Can we see her? Marcus asked. Of course. Margaret led us down a sunny hallway to a room at the end. It was spacious, decorated with photos I recognized. Pictures of Sandra as a child, as a young woman, as a bride, my wedding photos, pictures of Marcus and Rebecca as babies. A life documented on the walls of a room in a place we'd never known existed. In the bed, tiny and fragile, was an old woman. She had Sandra's eyes, or Sandra had hers. Even with the ravages of age and disease, I could see the resemblance. "Helen," Margaret said softly, approaching the bed. "You have visitors today." Helen's eyes were open but unfocused. She didn't react to Margaret's voice or to our presence. Rebecca started crying silently. Marcus put his arm around her. I just stood there looking at this woman, this stranger who was family, whose care had consumed my wife's life and our money for decades. "Why, didn't Mom tell us?" Rebecca finally asked. Margaret gestured for us to follow her back to her office. When she closed the door, she sat down heavily. "I can only tell you what Sandra told me over the years. She was ashamed." "Ashamed?" Marcus's voice was sharp. "Of what? Of needing help. Of her mother's illness. Of not being able to afford the level of care she wanted Helen to have on her nursing salary alone." Margaret looked at me. "Sandra said you would have insisted on helping, that you would have wanted to move Helen to a less expensive facility, something within your budget as a couple. She said you would have been right, financially responsible, but that she couldn't do it. She couldn't put her mother in a state facility. So she lied. For 35 years, she lied." "Yes," Margaret said quietly. "And she visited every single Wednesday for 35 years, never missing once. She brought flowers, read to Helen even after Helen couldn't understand words anymore, held her hand, brushed her hair. Your wife loved her mother desperately, and she was willing to sacrifice everything, including her integrity and your trust, to give Helen the best possible end to her life." "How much does Helen's care cost now?" I asked. "Around $9,000 a month." The number hit me like a physical blow. Sandra had been paying that much? For how long? Margaret consulted her records. "The payment stopped 6 months ago. We've been using facility funds to cover Helen's care since then. Assuming Sandra was dealing with temporary financial issues and would resume payments. But given her death, we need to discuss Helen's future." We sat in that office for 2 hours, going through options. The brutal reality was that I couldn't afford $9,000 a month, even if I wanted to continue Sandra's legacy, even if I felt obligated to this woman I'd never known was alive. The money wasn't there. Medicare and Medicaid were options, but they would require moving Helen to a different facility, one of the state-run places Sandra had spent decades avoiding. "She'll die soon anyway, won't she?" Marcus asked bluntly, given her age and condition. Margaret nodded. "It could be months. It could be years. There's no way to know. But yes, she's in the final stages of her life." I made the decision Sandra couldn't make. Helen would be transferred to a state facility. We'd make sure it was the best one available, that she'd be comfortable and cared for. But I couldn't bankrupt our family continuing to pay for private care. Margaret was understanding. I think Sandra would be relieved, actually. I think the burden of this secret was killing her long before the accident. She was tired, Mr. Thompson, so tired. We visited Helen 3 more times before she was transferred. I went alone on Wednesday, Sandra's day, and sat with this woman who'd shaped my wife's entire adult life without me knowing. I held her hand, this paper-thin hand that couldn't squeeze back, and I talked to her. I told her about Sandra, about what a good daughter she'd had, about how Sandra had sacrificed everything to keep her comfortable. I told her I was sorry I hadn't known, that I would have helped if given the chance, that I wished Sandra had trusted me with this burden. Helen died 6 weeks after being transferred to the state facility. She passed quietly in her sleep, and maybe it was a mercy. We buried her next to Sandra, mother and daughter reunited. The headstone we'd placed for Helen in 1987 was removed, replaced with one bearing her actual death date, 2024, the lie corrected, at least in stone. The financial aftermath was devastating. The home equity line was still there. $75,000 of debt I had to figure out how to pay. Our retirement savings were intact, but they were meant for decades of future living, not for paying down debts Sandra had hidden. I picked up consulting work, using my engineering background to take on projects I'd thought I was done with. Marcus helped, insisting on paying half the monthly home equity payment. Rebecca couldn't help financially, not with a new baby and her own mortgage, but she called every day, just to check in, just to make sure I was okay. I wasn't okay. Some days I was angry at Sandra. Furiously, painfully angry at the deception, at the financial mess, at the broken trust. Other days I understood. She'd been trapped between impossible choices. Between her mother's care and her marriage's honesty. She'd chosen her mother, and while I could be hurt by that choice, I couldn't say it was wrong, just painful. George, my financial advisor, helped me restructure everything. We created a 5-year plan to pay off the home equity line. It meant working longer than I'd planned. Meant delaying the retirement travel Sandra and I had talked about. But it was manageable, barely. One evening, about 3 months after Helen's death, I was going through more of Sandra's papers when I found one last letter. This one was different. It wasn't from the care facility. It was from Sandra to me, dated just 2 weeks before she died. William, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you found out about Helen, about the account, about all of it. I don't know if you've been to see her yet, but I hope you have. I hope you met her, even if she couldn't meet you back. I need you to know that I wanted to tell you. 1,000 times over 35 years, I almost did. But every time I got close, I imagined the conversation. Imagined you asking reasonable questions. Why didn't we use a more affordable facility? Why couldn't we work together on this? Why did I feel the need to hide it? And the answers to those questions made me feel selfish and ashamed. Because the truth is, I couldn't let my mother go to a state facility. I'd visited them when she was first diagnosed. I'd seen the conditions, the understaffing, the institutional bleakness. And I couldn't do it to her. My mother raised me alone after my father died. She worked 2 jobs to put me through nursing school. She sacrificed everything for me. When she got sick, when her mind started slipping away, I made a promise to her on one of her last clear days. I promised she'd be somewhere beautiful, somewhere kind, somewhere she'd be treated with dignity, even when she couldn't remember her own name. I kept that promise, but I broke my promise to you, the one where I said I'd be honest, where I said we'd face everything together. I've carried this guilt for decades, and it's exhausted me. I'm so tired, William. Tired of the lies, tired of the Wednesday routine, tired of calculating and juggling and making it all work. Part of me hopes I'll die before Helen does, before this secret destroys us. And if that happens, if you're reading this after I'm gone, I need you to know that everything else was real. My love for you was real. Our life together was real. Our children, our home, our partnership in every other way. All of it real and true and the best part of my life. But I couldn't let my mother die alone in a place that didn't care. I just couldn't. I hope you can forgive me someday. If not, I understand. But please don't let this change how you remember our marriage. Don't let this one secret erase 35 years of everything else. I loved you, William. I love you still. Wherever I am. Sandra, I read that letter until I had it memorized. Then I put it away in the wooden chest with all the others. An archive of secret devotion and impossible choices. Did I forgive her? I'm still working on that. Some days yes, some days no. Some days I understand that people are complicated, that love isn't simple, that sometimes we make choices that hurt the people we care about because we're trying to protect someone else we care about, and sometimes there's no good choice, just less bad ones. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Raymond, a man in his 60s who specialized in grief and betrayal. He asked me hard questions. Did Sandra's secret diminish the good years? Did the lie cancel out the truth of the rest of the marriage? Could I hold both realities at once, the devoted wife and the secret keeper? I'm learning to. It's not easy. Some days I look at our wedding photos and see only the beginning of a deception. Other days I see 2 kids in love, making promises they meant, even if one of them couldn't keep all of them. Marcus and Rebecca have their own processing to do. Marcus is angry in a way he won't fully admit. He feels betrayed on my behalf, protective of me, resentful of the grandmother. He never knew stealing money that could have been his inheritance. Rebecca is more sympathetic to Sandra. She understands the impossible position of loving someone whose care you can't quite afford. She's wondered aloud what she'd do if it were me someday. If I needed care she couldn't provide, would she lie to her own husband to give me the best? She doesn't know. Neither do I. 6 months after Sandra's death, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I called Diane, Sandra's colleague from the hospital, and asked if I could set up a memorial fund in Sandra's name, something to help families dealing with the costs of long-term memory care, something so that maybe other people wouldn't have to make Sandra's impossible choice. We established the Sandra Thompson Memory Care Fund. I put in the first $5,000, money from selling Sandra's car. Marcus and Rebecca contributed. So did dozens of Sandra's colleagues and friends. Within a year, we'd raised enough to help 3 families with care costs. It didn't erase the debt. It didn't undo the lies. But it transformed the pain into something useful. Something that honored both Sandra's devotion and the cost of her choices. Still live in our house. The house with the home equity line. The house Sandra mortgaged to pay for her mother's care. Some people told me to sell it, to downsize, to escape the financial burden and the memories. But this is where I raised my children. This is where Sandra and I built a life. The lie doesn't erase the truth of everything else that happened here. I'm 68 now. I work part-time consulting, enough to make the payments and live modestly. I visit Sandra's grave every Sunday. Sometimes I talk to her. Sometimes I'm still angry. Sometimes I just sit there in silence, feeling the weight of complicated love. Last month, I met with a woman named Patricia Chen from the credit union, the same one who'd helped me close Sandra's secret account. She'd heard about the memorial fund and wanted to contribute. Over coffee, she told me about her own mother's dementia, about the financial strain, about the secrets we keep to protect the people we love. Secrets are heavy, she said, but sometimes people carry them because they think they're protecting us from the weight. They don't realize we'd rather carry it together. Would Sandra have told you, I asked, if she could go back? If she could start over? Patricia thought about it. Probably not, because from her perspective, she was solving the problem. She was managing it. She didn't see herself as deceiving you. She saw herself as protecting you from a burden she thought was hers alone to carry. But it wasn't hers alone. It was ours. It should have been ours. Yes, Patricia agreed. It should have been. But she loved her mother more than she trusted you to understand. And that's the part that really hurts, isn't it? It is. The idea that Sandra thought I wouldn't help, wouldn't understand, wouldn't support her mother's care if I knew the full picture. Maybe she was right. Maybe I would have insisted on something more financially sensible. Maybe I would have pushed for the state facility, for the responsible choice. Maybe she knew me better than I knew myself. And that's why she lied. Or maybe she never gave me the chance to prove her wrong. That's what I wish I could tell her now. That I wish she'd trusted me. That we could have figured it out together. That the financial strain would have been worth it if it meant not having this betrayal sitting between us even now, even after she's gone. I'm writing this down because someone needs to know the full story. Not the sanitized version we tell at family gatherings. Not the simple narrative of a faithful wife struck down too young. The complicated truth. Sandra was a devoted daughter who sacrificed her integrity to care for her mother. She was a loving wife who lied for 35 years. She was a skilled nurse who helped countless children but couldn't help her own mother without destroying her family's trust. She was all of these things at once, and none of them cancel out the others. If there's a lesson here, it's this. Financial secrets in a marriage are poison, even ones that start with good intentions, even ones meant to protect. Because money isn't just numbers. Money is trust, partnership, shared decision-making. When you hide financial choices from your spouse, no matter how noble the reason, you're saying, I don't trust you with this truth. I don't believe we can handle this together. And maybe sometimes, you're right. Maybe sometimes one person in a marriage genuinely can't handle the truth. But most of the time, I think we underestimate the people we love. We assume they'll react badly, that they won't understand, that they can't bear the weight. And so we carry it alone and we break under it. And we leave behind wreckage that the people we were protecting have to clean up. I'm still cleaning it up. The debt will be paid off in 3 more years. The memorial fund continues to grow. Helen's grave is marked correctly now. Sandra's colleagues still tell stories about her dedication and skill. And me? I'm learning to live with complexity, to hold anger and understanding in the same breath, to honor Sandra's devotion to her mother while acknowledging the damage her secrecy caused, to rebuild a sense of financial security after learning that the security I thought we had was partially illusion, to forgive slowly, imperfectly, a woman who loved me and lied to me for 35 years. Some Wednesday mornings I find myself driving north, toward where Greenwood Care Facility still operates, still providing expensive, excellent care to people whose families can afford it. I don't go in, but I drive past, and I think about Sandra making that drive every week for 3.5 decades. The determination it must have taken, the exhaustion, the loneliness of carrying a secret that big for that long. And I think about Helen, who lived to 98 in comfort and dignity because her daughter refused to let her go to a lesser place, who died not knowing that her care had cost her daughter a marriage's full honesty, who was beyond understanding the sacrifice being made on her behalf. Was it worth it? I don't know. I can't answer that. Sandra thought it was. Helen couldn't know, and me? I'm left with the bill, literal and metaphorical, trying to decide if martyrdom is noble or selfish, if secrets are protection or betrayal. Both, probably. Like most things in life, it's complicated. It's messy. It doesn't fit into neat categories of right and wrong. The hardest part isn't the money. Money can be earned back, debts can be paid, retirement plans can be adjusted. The hardest part is rewriting the story of my marriage in my head. Every memory now has a shadow over it. Every Wednesday morning when Sandra kissed me goodbye. Every time she came home and I asked about her appointment and she smiled and said it went fine. Every vacation we took where she insisted on coming home by Tuesday night so she wouldn't miss her Wednesday routine. All of it was real and fake at the same time. She really did kiss me. She really did love me. But she was also maintaining an elaborate fiction that required constant upkeep. Constant lies, constant calculation. How do you reconcile that? How do you hold both truths at once? Dr. Raymond says it's possible. He says humans are capable of incredible compartmentalization. That Sandra probably didn't even experience it as lying after a while. It was just what she did on Wednesdays. Part of her routine, like brushing her teeth or taking her vitamins. The lie became so integrated into her life that it stopped feeling like a lie and became just another task to manage. I'm not sure that makes it better. Maybe it makes it worse. Because if she'd felt guilty, if she'd struggled with it, at least that would mean she recognized the betrayal. But if it became normal to her, if she stopped even questioning it, then what does that say about our marriage? What does it say about trust? Marcus started therapy too. His anger hasn't dissipated much, but he's learning to direct it more productively. He volunteers now at a nonprofit that helps families navigate the financial complexities of elder care. He gives talks about the importance of having difficult conversations before crisis hits, about making plans together, about not shouldering burdens alone. He's good at it. He channels his frustration with his mother into helping others avoid the same mistakes. Rebecca named her baby Helen. When she told me, I cried. Not sad tears exactly, complicated tears. Tears for the grandmother Helen never met. For the great-grandmother baby Helen will never know. For the woman whose existence shaped all of our lives without us knowing it. It's a way of bringing Helen into the family, Rebecca said. Of acknowledging that she was real, that she mattered. That Mom's love for her was real even if the circumstances were impossibly hard. I held baby Helen in the hospital. This tiny person with Sandra's eyes. And I thought about legacies, about what we passed down. Sandra passed down devotion and secrecy, love and deception, strength and weakness all tangled together. And now it's my job to help my children sort through it, to help them understand that people aren't simple, that the person who hurt you can also be the person who loved you most. The Memorial Fund had its first annual gala last month. We raised $47,000 in one night. Families stood up and told stories about the impossible choices of elder care, about the guilt and exhaustion and financial strain, about choosing between their parents' dignity and their own financial security, about the secrets they'd kept or almost kept. One woman, probably in her 50s, stood at the microphone with tears streaming down her face. My father has Alzheimer's, she said. He's in a state facility because that's all we can afford. Every time I visit him, I see the understaffing, the institutional feel, the lack of personal attention. And I feel like I'm failing him, like I'm not doing enough. But I have 3 kids in college. I have a mortgage. I can't afford $8,000 a month for private care, so I live with the guilt. Every single day, after the gala, she found me. She gripped my hands hard. Thank you for starting this. Thank you for being honest about how hard this is. Your wife, she was trying to do the impossible. We all are. I think that's when I finally started to forgive Sandra. Not completely, not fully, but the beginning of it. Because I realized she wasn't some uniquely flawed person making uniquely bad choices. She was just a woman in an impossible situation, trying to honor competing loyalties, trying to care for everyone and ending up able to be fully honest with no one. She was human, deeply messily, complicatedly human. I started dating again about a year after Sandra's death. It felt strange, disloyal even. But Dr. Raymond pointed out that Sandra had been keeping secrets our entire marriage. I was allowed to build a new life that didn't revolve around her memory. Her name is Catherine. She's a widow too, lost her husband to cancer 5 years ago. We met at a grief support group, bonded over the complicated nature of losing a spouse. The way people expect you to either sanctify them or demonize them, when the truth is usually somewhere in between. I told Catherine about Sandra on our third date. All of it. The secret account, the hidden mother, the 35 years of Wednesday deception, the financial wreckage, the anger and confusion and slow forgiveness. I expected her to be horrified, to see it as a red flag, to worry about what other secrets I might be hiding. Instead, she nodded slowly and said, "My husband had a gambling problem. I didn't know until after he died and the creditors started calling. He'd taken out credit cards in his name, borrowed from friends, even taken a second mortgage I didn't know about. By the time I discovered it all, we were $200,000 in debt." She looked at me with understanding in her eyes. Secrets destroy us, even ones that start with good intentions, even ones that are trying to protect us. Because they rob us of the chance to face things together, to make choices as partners, to actually be in a marriage, instead of just adjacent to one. Catherine gets it in a way most people don't. She understands that I can be angry at Sandra and still love her memory, that I can acknowledge the betrayal while recognizing the devotion. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. It just means deciding not to let the secret define everything else. We take it slow. Both of us have been burned by hidden truths. Both of us are learning to ask questions, to look at bank statements together, to talk about money and family and difficult decisions before they become crises. It's not romantic exactly, but it's real. And after 35 years of a marriage built partially on fiction, real feels like enough. The home equity line will be paid off next year. I'm 69 now, officially retired from consulting, living on Social Security and the modest pension I earned over my career as an engineer. It's not the retirement Sandra and I planned. We were going to travel, see Europe, take the grandkids to Disney World. Instead, I live simply, budget carefully, and find satisfaction in smaller things. Marcus brought his family over last Sunday. We grilled burgers in the backyard, the same backyard where I'd taught him to throw a baseball, where Sandra had planted tomatoes every summer, where we'd hosted countless family gatherings. Marcus's oldest asked me about Grandma. Not Helen, the great-grandmother she never knew, but Sandra. What was Grandma like? She asked with the innocent curiosity of a 7-year-old. I thought about how to answer. I could tell her the sanitized version, the perfect grandmother who loved her and baked cookies and told stories. Or I could tell her the complicated truth. Age-appropriate, but honest. Your grandmother was one of the strongest people I ever knew, I said finally. She was a nurse who helped a lot of kids. She loved her family more than anything. And she had a very hard job taking care of her own mother, your great-grandmother Helen, who was sick for a long time. Sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard choices, and your grandma made some choices that were hard for me to understand. But she did them because she loved her mother very much. Was she a good person? The little girl asked. I looked at Marcus. He nodded slightly, giving me permission to answer honestly. She was a real person, I said, which means she was good at some things and made mistakes at other things. But yes, overall, she was a very good person who loved you very much. The little girl seemed satisfied with that answer. She ran off to play with her brother. Marcus sat down next to me. Thanks, Dad, for being honest but kind. It's what kids need to hear, that people are complicated. I'm still learning that myself, I admitted. Some days I'm angrier than others. Some days I understand more than others. Most days I'm just somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out how to remember 35 years of marriage knowing what I know now. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive her? Marcus asked. I don't know. Maybe forgiveness isn't an event, it's a process. Maybe I'll spend the rest of my life forgiving her a little bit more each day. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll die still carrying some anger about it. And maybe that's okay too. The Sandra Thompson Memorial Care Fund helped its 20th family last month. 20 families who won't have to choose between their parents' dignity and their own financial security. At least not entirely. 20 families who will have a few extra months of quality care, a bit of breathing room, a sense that they're not completely alone in an impossible situation. It doesn't erase what Sandra did. It doesn't balance the ledger or make the lies okay. But it takes the pain she caused and transforms it into something useful, something that helps people. And maybe that's the best any of us can hope for with our mistakes and the mistakes made against us. Not erasure, but transformation. Not forgetting, but finding purpose in the pain. I found another letter from Sandra last week. It was tucked into a photo album I was going through, looking for pictures of her to share with the grandkids. This letter was different from the first one. It was dated just 3 days before she died. William, I'm writing this because I've decided to tell you. Tonight after dinner I'm going to tell you about Helen. About the account. About all of it. I can't carry this anymore. It's literally killing me. The stress, the secrecy, the weight of it. I think about it every day. I dream about it. I wake up at 3 a.m., worrying about what happens when I can't afford the payments anymore. What happens when you find out? What happens to Helen when I'm gone? So tonight I'm going to tell you. I'm terrified. I'm terrified you'll leave me, that you'll hate me, that you'll never forgive me. But I'm more terrified of dying with this secret still between us, of you finding out after I'm gone and thinking that I never loved you enough to be honest. I don't know what you'll say. I don't know if our marriage can survive this. But I know it can't survive any longer with me lying every Wednesday, with me stealing from our joint account, with me carrying this enormous weight alone. So tonight, after dinner, I'm going to tell you everything. And whatever happens next, at least it will be real. At least we'll face it together. I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I was lying, especially when I was lying, because I was lying to protect something I couldn't bear to lose. But in doing so, I was losing you anyway. Just slowly, invisibly, in all the ways that matter. Wish me courage, Sandra. She never told me. We had dinner that night, 3 days before she died. I remember it clearly now, searching my memory for signs I'd missed. We had salmon and roasted vegetables. We talked about Rebecca's pregnancy, about whether Marcus might finally propose to his girlfriend, about nothing important. Sandra seemed quiet, maybe a little tense, but I attributed it to fatigue from work. After dinner, she cleared the dishes. I went to my office to answer some emails. When I came back an hour later, she was on the couch watching television. Did she lose her nerve? Did she decide the timing wasn't right? Did she plan to tell me the next day or the day after? Someday that never came because a drunk driver ran a red light and stole her chance at honesty. I'll never know. But I have this letter, this proof that she wanted to tell me, that she was trying, that the secret had become unbearable even to her, the person who'd maintained it for 35 years. Does it change anything? I'm not sure. She still lied for decades. She still chose secrecy over partnership. But she also chose at the end to try to come clean. She just ran out of time. I showed the letter to Dr. Raymond. What do you feel when you read this? He asked. Relief, I said, that she was going to tell me, that she recognized the damage the secret was causing, that she was trying to fix it, even if she never got the chance. And sadness. So much sadness. Because if she'd told me that night, we could have worked through it together. We could have figured out Helen's care, dealt with the debt, rebuilt the trust. It would have been hard, maybe the hardest thing we'd ever faced as a couple, but we would have faced it together. Instead, she died with the secret, and I have to face all of it alone. Dr. Raymond nodded. That's grief. Not just grief over her death, but grief over the conversation you never got to have, the honesty that almost happened, the partnership that was so close but never quite materialized. It's one of the harder forms of grief because there's no resolution, no closure, just a letter that says she was trying, and a reality that says it wasn't enough. I keep that letter with the others now, in the wooden chest that holds Sandra's secret correspondence. Occasionally I take them all out and read through them, trying to piece together the full picture of the woman I was married to. The devoted daughter, the guilty wife, the exhausted caregiver, the secret keeper, the woman who almost came clean but ran out of time. Catherine asked me once why I keep reading them, why I put myself through it. Doesn't it just make you angry all over again? Sometimes, I admitted, but it also helps me understand. These letters are the only place where Sandra was completely honest. Not with me, but with herself. Reading them is the closest I can get to actually knowing what she was thinking, feeling, struggling with all those years. It's hard, but it's also important. I need to know who she really was, not just who I thought she was. Marcus doesn't read the letters. He looked at a few once and couldn't continue. It's too painful, he said. Seeing Mom struggle, seeing her justify the lies, seeing her plan to tell you and then not follow through. I'd rather remember her the way she was with me, as my mom, not as this complicated person making terrible choices. I understand that. We all grieve differently. Marcus needs his mother to remain mostly intact in his memory. Rebecca reads the letters sometimes, trying to understand her mother's choices through the lens of her own motherhood. If it were you, Dad, she said once, if you had Alzheimer's and I could only afford to put you in a state facility, but I knew I could somehow scrape together the money for somewhere better if I just kept it secret from my husband, would I do it? Would I lie the way Mom lied? I don't know, I told her honestly. And that's the thing about moral choices. We never really know what we'd do until we're in that situation. It's easy to judge from the outside, to say what we would or wouldn't do. But when you're actually there, when it's your parent, when you've made a promise, when the alternative feels unbearable, suddenly the lines aren't so clear anymore. But you'd want me to tell my husband. Rebecca pressed. You'd want me to face it together with him, right? Yes, I said. I'd want that. Not because the secret is always worse than the truth, though usually it is, but because marriage is supposed to be a partnership, and you can't partner with someone who's hiding fundamental pieces of their life from you. You can coexist, you can run parallel lives, but you can't actually be partners without honesty. 2 years after Sandra's death, I'm in a different place. The raw anger has faded into something quieter, more manageable. I've stopped mentally relitigating every Wednesday of our marriage. I've stopped trying to spot the signs I missed, the clues that should have tipped me off. Instead, I've accepted that Sandra was very good at keeping secrets, that she compartmentalized her life in ways I never could, that she carried an enormous burden with grace and determination, even if the burden itself was self-imposed and the grace was built on lies. I miss her. That's the confusing part. After everything, after the betrayal and the financial wreckage and the rewriting of our entire marriage in my mind, I still miss her. I miss her laugh, her competence, the way she'd hum while cooking dinner. I miss having a partner, even a partner who was keeping enormous secrets. I miss the life I thought we had, even knowing now that it wasn't entirely real. Dr. Raymond says this is normal, that you can miss someone and be angry at them simultaneously. That love doesn't evaporate just because trust was broken. That grief is complicated and doesn't follow neat emotional trajectories. Some days I believe him. Some days I think I'm just a fool. Missing a woman who lied to me for 35 years, mourning a marriage that was partially fiction. But then I remember the good parts, the real parts, the way Sandra held my hand during my father's funeral, the way she stayed up all night with Marcus when he had croup, never leaving his side, singing to him in the dark, the way she'd leave little notes in my lunch when I traveled for work, silly jokes and reminders that she loved me. Those things were real. The lies didn't make them less real. They just made them more complicated. I'm writing all of this down because somebody needs to tell the full story. Not the simple version where Sandra was either a saint or a villain, but the complicated truth. She was a woman who loved deeply, who made a promise she couldn't break, who chose her mother over her marriage's honesty, who paid for that choice every Wednesday for 35 years until it killed her. She was wrong to lie. She was right to care for her mother. Both things are true. If there's something to learn from this, it's simple. Don't keep financial secrets from your spouse. I know that sounds obvious. I know everyone reading this probably thinks they'd never do what Sandra did. But I thought that too. I thought Sandra would never do what Sandra did. And yet, faced with an impossible choice between competing loyalties, she made the decision she made. So talk to your spouse. About money, about family obligations, about hard choices and expensive care and promises you made to your parents. Talk before the crisis hits. Talk before you're trapped between your mother's dignity and your marriage's honesty. Talk before the secret becomes so big you can't imagine ever revealing it. Because secrets have weight. They have mass. They take up space in your life, in your mind, in your marriage. And eventually they either crush you or force you to tell the truth. Sandra chose to be crushed. I chose to tell the truth after she was gone. Neither choice is good. Neither outcome is happy. But at least now, at least here in this moment, there are no more secrets. Helen is dead and properly buried. Sandra is dead and honestly remembered. The debt is nearly paid. The memorial fund helps families facing the same impossible choices. And me? I'm 69 years old, living in a house I almost lost, building a new relationship based on radical honesty, helping my children process their mother's complicated legacy, and learning slowly, painfully, how to forgive someone who isn't here to apologize. Is this healing? I think so. It doesn't feel like the healing you see in movies, where everything resolves neatly, and the music swells, and you know everyone will be okay. This healing is messier, slower, more uncertain. Some days I take steps forward. Some days I slide back. But overall, gradually, I'm building a life that makes sense again. A life where I know the truth, even if the truth is hard. A life where I can be angry at Sandra and grateful for the years we had. A life where I can acknowledge the betrayal without letting it define everything else. Last week, on a Wednesday, I drove past the exit for where Greenwood Care Facility is. I didn't take it. But I thought about Sandra making that drive every single week for 35 years. The dedication it required, the careful planning, the weight of maintaining a fiction for decades. And I thought about Helen, who lived to 98 in comfort, who died not knowing the cost of her care, who was loved so fiercely by a daughter willing to sacrifice everything, including her integrity, to keep her safe. Was it worth it? I still don't have an answer, but I'm learning to live with the question, and maybe that's enough.